Helen Lord, the middle-aged schoolteacher who is accused of assaulting and wounding Constable William Forbush at Calderley Police Station on May the 16th, was 2 days before the incident dismissed from her provisional position at the John Fordhouse Comprehensive School by the headmistress, Mrs. Eunice Bentley. On the same day, Mrs. Bentley received a letter concerning Miss Lord from the Chief Constable's office. The man who signed the letter, Detective Superintendent Brotherton, has insisted that the contents must remain confidential. Nevertheless, Mr. Harry Dealey, Miss Lord's counsel, is trying to get the letter introduced in evidence despite strong opposition from Mr. Charles Lotterby for the prosecution, who is claiming that the letter is privileged information.
On my client's state of mind at the relevant time.
Does happen to be in the hands of an Amherst party.
Is that part of So, Your Honour?
Well, there would seem to be certain precedents. Just a moment, Mr. Dealey. Yes, I refer you to Conway and Rimmer, 1968. Now, the judge in that case supported a claim of privilege, ruling that the very nature of a class of document may resist application to disclosure.
But surely in this case, Your Honour, the courts was dealing with government papers of one sort or another, the disclosure of which would not have been in the public interest.
The principle might well be extended to embrace our interest here.
Only if we consider it our duty to shield the police at all costs.
I beg your pardon?
Well, am I to take it that Your Honour is anxious in this case to spare the Chief Constable's office all possible embarrassment?
I must earnestly suggest that you withdraw that remark, Mr. Dealey.
My meaning is this, Your Honour, that there is a profound difference between government papers and a letter from the Chief Constable's office giving information about an individual such as we have here. The one is worthy of protection and discretion, the other is contemptible and arguably libelous.
Oh, come on, you can't mean that.
Well, if I laid similar information, my letter would be actionable.
Well, that's as may be. After all, you're not the...
Police, were you going to say? I do hope not.
Mr. Dealey, are you maintaining that the letter says something relating to your client which is not in fact true?
I'm maintaining that it might, Your Honour. But how can the court know until it is introduced?
But you've admitted to knowledge of the contents.
Yes, Your Honour.
Well, then, in your opinion, does the letter say something which is not in fact true?
Your Honour, I must apologise for my impertinence and hasty speech. But we are here concerned with the whole question of privilege before the law. Now, English courts have always been slow to concede privilege. A doctor cannot withhold his patient's confidences, for example. A priest, the secrets of the confessional.
That's arguable. In one famous precedent, a Chief Justice ruled that he would never compel a clergyman to divulge against his will. You'll find that's Queen against Griffin, 1853.
Also Broughton Pitt, 1828, Your Honour. A very similar affair.
Indeed, Mr. Lotterby?
Oh, it's not in the latest Archbold, Your Honour. You'll find it in the 35th edition.
Oh, I see.
So the application of case law rests with the bench then, Your Honour?
As always, Mr. Dealey, as always. Now, you are concerned to show that your client's state of mind at the time of the attack on Constable Forbush was critical. Isn't that the case?
Obviously, Your Honour.
Well, I would have thought we were some way towards establishing a disturbed state of mind as things stand. The introduction of the letter doesn't seem to me to be absolutely necessary at this point. Of course, these are matters not for the bench, but for learned counsel. Questions of emphasis, presentation, Mr. Dealey. Since I do not myself believe that disclosure is absolutely necessary at this point, I uphold for the time being my previous ruling that the document shall not be admitted in evidence. Mr. Dealey, do you wish to continue cross-examining the witness, Mrs. Bentley?
If Your Honour so pleases.
Mrs. Bentley, will you come to the witness box, please? Remember, you're still under oath.
Mrs. Bentley, did anything happen on May the 14th to change whatever assessment you might have made of Miss Lord's character?
No, not directly. I have already told the court that I made up my mind to dismiss Miss Lord before the letter arrived.
That wasn't quite what I asked you. So, the letter in fact did tell you something relating to Miss Lord's character then?
Well, yes.
Something detrimental? Mrs. Bentley?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you, Mrs. Bentley.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, supposing you had formed a favourable opinion of Miss Lord's teaching abilities, would that letter and what it have told you been sufficient still to have made you dismiss her?
That's a very difficult question, Mr. Dealey.
I think you might make some effort to answer it, Mrs. Bentley.
Well, how can one say? It's always impossible to say how one would have acted, and if circumstances have been different. You're putting a hypothetical case, Mr. Dealey.
Only to find out, if I can, what effect that letter truly had on you, Mrs. Bentley.
I repeat, it had none.
None whatever?
None on my decision. Miss Lord, in my opinion, was not a suitable teacher for John Ford House, and that is why I got rid of her.
Got rid?
Dismissed.
You said got rid. That's a form of words implying you were dealing with someone totally undesirable.
Mr. Dealey.
Mrs. Bentley, do you honestly ask the jury to believe that that letter and what it said had nothing whatever to do with your decision not to confirm Miss Lord's appointment? It's very difficult to see how you could possibly have kept it out of your deliberations. Especially since you frankly admitted here that my hypothetical case presented you with a difficult question.
Well, the fact of the matter is that the letter may have assured me, for quite different reasons, that I was right to decide not to persevere with Miss Lord. But my decision was taken on the grounds I have already stated, and on no others.
Thank you, Mrs. Bentley. No further questions.
That concludes the case for the prosecution, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Lotterby. You may stand down, Mr. Bentley.
Sure.
Your Honor, before calling my evidence for the defense proper, I should like to recall one of the prosecution witnesses.
Oh, who would that be, Mr. Dealey?
Constable William Forbush, Your Honor.
Yes, of course, if you so wish. But in view of the time, I will take that in the morning, Mr. Dealey.
Court will rise.
Constable William Forbush.
Remind you that you're still under oath, Constable.
Thank you, Your Honour. Yes, Your Honour.
Sorry to have to bring you back into the box again, Constable, but there's one item of your previous evidence that I should like to clarify before I continue. Now, in a reply to a question I put to you concerning Miss Lord's state of mind on the day of the attack, you said, didn't you, that you didn't feel you should call a doctor. Is that right?
That's right, sir.
That you didn't think in any way that she was sick.
No, sir.
In fact, you've testified, haven't you, that as far as you were concerned, she was merely tense and angry.
Yes, sir.
You've had a good deal of experience of abnormal states of mind, have you, Constable?
Abnormal? No, sir. Of course not, sir.
Of course not.
No, sir.
Strange, then, that you should have been able to decide so readily that Miss Lord's state of mind on May the 16th was ordinary, everyday anger and tension.
Well, all I meant by that, sir, was that... Well, I didn't intend...
Constable, this is a most important point. We must have your testimony clear. Now, we all understand what you've been through and now how you feel about it. We must be accurate. On mature reflection, therefore, do you not feel that things would have been different for you on that day if, in fact, you had actually called a doctor to Miss Lord?
Well, sir, that's certainly a point of view, sir.
It certainly is, Constable. A valid one, would you say?
Well, yes, sir. In a way, sir. All I meant before, sir, was that it was Miss Lord's anger and, well, how tense she was that I remembered best, sir. But I do see that she would have had to have been in a pretty funny state of mind, sir. Well, just to do what she did.
Thank you, Constable. No further questions.
No matters arising, Your Honor.
Thank you, Constable. You may stand down.
Your Honor, I think at this point I ought to explain the order of my witnesses. Normally, of course, I should call my client first, But in this particular case, I shall seek rather to call 2 others to begin with.
Is there a special reason for this, Mr. Dealey?
Well, as it happens, Your Honour, both my witnesses are professional men, and it would be of great convenience if they could be heard as soon as possible.
Yes, I see. Well, under the circumstances, that would seem to be permissible.
Thank you, Your Honour. I should like to call Dr. Ralph Transome, please.
Dr. Ralph Transome, please. Dr. Ralph Transome. What is your religion?
Church of England.
If you take the book in your right hand, please, and repeat the words written on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I give to this court and jury shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Is your name Dr. Ralph Transome?
It is?
And are you a registered medical practitioner?
Yes.
What are your qualifications, please?
I'm a member of the Royal College of Physicians. I'm a consultant in neurology at the Merivale Group of Hospitals.
So you're properly described as a neurologist, Doctor.
Yes. I also have some competence in psychiatry.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, the accused in this case, Miss Helen Lord, is a patient of yours, I believe.
Well, she came to see me at Merivale on a couple of occasions in May. It was just after she arrived in Calderley, I believe. Her GP in Suffolk referred her to me.
For any particular complaint, Doctor?
Well, she'd been unable to sleep, you know, feeling sick, finding it hard to keep food down. The whole thing was plainly of a nervous origin. Miss Lord is an immensely nervous person. She seems capable of a kind of automatism.
Automatism? Could you clarify that for us, Doctor?
Automatism is a comparatively rare condition, though well enough attested to in its way. It implies a psychological trauma as a result of, well, profound emotional shock as a general rule, whereas another person might react vociferously or faint clean away. The automatism subject moves into a pattern of half-willed, perhaps only part-comprehended, twilight behavior. It's not unlike sleepwalking.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, you've told us that Miss Lord came to see you twice in May.
Yes.
On what dates?
Now, according to my original notes, I saw her on May the 4th and then again on the 15th.
Miss Lord had an appointment with you on May the 15th.
Yes, it had been arranged some time previously.
Now, did you notice anything different about her on the 15th, Doctor?
From the moment she walked into my consulting room, it was obvious to me that a great change had taken place in my patient.
Yes, Doctor?
Her actions were slow, curiously deliberate, punctuated by strange little outbursts of anger. It took me quite some time to discover that only the previous day she had been sacked from her job at the John Ford House School.
But she was able to tell you that much, Doctor. I mean, she wasn't stupefied, tongue-tied.
Oh, no. The condition doesn't paralyze all reaction, except in extreme form. Anyone who didn't know something of her basic anxieties might have taken her for, well, normal, but upset.
Thank you, Doctor. What did you do?
Prescribed something to make her sleep for the time being and told her to come back to me first thing the following morning.
And did Miss Lord keep that second appointment?
No, unfortunately, she never returned to my surgery again.
Now, Doctor, have you read the prosecution witnesses' statements in this case?
Yes, carefully. And of course I've discussed the case with the accused at length.
So in the light of what you know of her, and of what you know of the evidence in this case, what do you consider was Miss Lord's state of mind when she struck the constable with that cold chisel?
It is my opinion that she was in a state of automatism, that her mind did not accompany her actions, that she wasn't aware of what she was doing.
Doctor, you described yourself as a neurologist with a competence in psychiatry.
That is so.
What, pray, is a competence?
I beg your pardon?
The expert evidence you've given here today would seem to me to relate much more to psychiatry than to neurology. Yet by your own admission, it isn't your main field.
In the first place, Mr. Lottery, my
Lotterby.
evidence...
The name's Lotterby.
Mr. Lotterby. My evidence is that of an acquaintance of Miss Lord's, rather than, shall I say, an expert after the fact.
You're not
But
answering my
since you ask, then I could say that disciplines overlap a good deal in modern medicine. When a patient is recommended to me, I must do the best I can.
If you suspected a psychiatric disorder in Miss Lord, wouldn't it have been more fitting on your part to hand her over to a skilled psychiatric colleague?
Not till I had assured myself that her trouble didn't indeed have a neurological basis. Remember, Miss Lord only came to me on 2 occasions.
Doctor, this state of automatism, I think you called it.
Yes,
Do you seriously ask us to believe such a state exists?
I do, yes.
You've observed it often.
Not often. I've already said it's a fairly rare condition.
So rare as to be entirely fictitious, perhaps.
Your Honour, I object.
Yes, Mr. Lutterby, you do seem to be adopting an unnecessarily aggressive attitude towards the witness.
Your Honour, I submit that what we've just been listening to is not expert medical testimony, but irresponsible opinion. Would I find automatism listed in a medical dictionary, Doctor?
Of course.
In precisely the terms you've used?
Fortunately, the dictionaries haven't yet the last word in medicine.
I see. But if you believed on the 15th of May that Miss Lord was subject to automatism, you surely shouldn't have let her leave your surgery, Doctor, should you?
I beg your pardon?
Not 24 hours after you diagnosed this convenient state of automatism, she went out and struck a policeman down with that cold chisel.
I made a mistake.
On the contrary, Doctor, I submit that you were triumphantly right. What? You saw quite clearly that Miss Lord was simply upset over having lost her job, so you prescribed a sleeping draught. No mystery in that. No need to invoke unlikely states of mind. Thank you, Doctor.
Doctor, you have said that the state of automatism occurs in response to profound emotional shock. Now, would you say that simply losing her job was enough to produce this in Miss Lord?
No, not by itself. There would need to have been some additional factor.
Some revelation, say, of proven persecution?
Oh, Your Honour, that's
Thank you,
brilliant.
Doctor. No further questions. May the witness be released, Your Honour.
Yes, thank you, Doctor. You may stand down.
For my next witness, I should like to call Mr. Roger Irwin.
Mr. Roger Irwin, please. Mr. Roger Irwin.
What is your religion?
Church of England.
You take the book in your right hand, please, and repeat the words written on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I give to this court and jury shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Your name is Roger Irwin,
It is.
and you live at Blackhound Cottage, Orford, Suffolk.
I do.
What is your profession, please?
I'm a school teacher. For the past 7 years, I've been headmaster at Deben End School.
And do you know the accused in this case, Miss Helen Lord?
I do. Until July of last year, Miss Lord was on my staff.
Miss Lord was almost a fixture at Deben End, if that isn't an ungallant way of putting it.
Well, she'd certainly been there a very long time, years before I arrived. 18 in all, I believe.
Then why did she leave, Mr. Irwin? Or was she discharged?
Oh, no. No, she resigned.
Resigned?
Yes.
Well, why did she do a thing like that?
It was her choice.
Well, was there a particular incident leading up to the resignation?
Well,
I think you'd better tell us about it, Mr. Irwin.
Deben End School has a senior and a junior section. One day last June, an 8-year-old boy from the junior section, Matthew Parks, went missing.
Went missing?
Yes. The parents came to see me. They were in a terrible state, naturally. I rang Miss Lord, and she said she knew nothing about it. So the police were called in, and a full-scale search was started. I stayed with the parents at their home. The mother was almost insane with grief. She kept blaming herself for ever allowing the boy to go to and from school on his own.
They didn't live very far away then, presumably.
No, just along the road.
I see.
Anyway, about 10 o'clock, there was a knock on the door. I answered it. It was Miss Lord, and she was crying. She had young Matthew with her. And she told me that after school that day, she had taken the boy home with her.
Miss Lord told you that she had taken the boy to her home.
Yes.
Now, did she say why?
No, but she was very upset about it. Then the parents came out. They were overjoyed to see their child again. However, when Miss Lord spoke to them, what she said was that she'd just found Matthew wandering about.
Silence in court.
Well, it was pretty worrying, I can tell you. I tried to get some sense out of the child, but he wasn't very clear about what had happened, then or later. So afterwards, when the police questioned me to see if I could help, I felt obliged to tell them that she'd, well, I suppose you'd have to say, kidnapped him.
Silence in court. Silence.
So, Mr. Owen, you told the police that Miss Lord had admitted taking the child to her home.
Well, it seemed to me that was my duty.
And what happened as a result?
Nothing much. Miss Lord denied what she'd said to me.
Denied?
Well, told the police that I must have misunderstood her. Well, it was very difficult to establish anything, really.
So, in the event, no charges were made?
No.
But it was generally believed in police circles, was it, that Miss Lord had in fact attempted to abduct the child?
Your Honour, the witness is not a police officer.
Oh, no, that's how it was, all right. The police knew she'd done it as well as anyone.
Mr. Irwin, that is an improper remark.
I apologise, Your Honour.
But what it is proper to say is that an area of suspicion remained. Right, Mr. Irwin?
Yes?
And in actual fact, you asked Miss Lord to resign from Debenham School.
Yes. Yes, that is so. She said she understood. About a month later, I heard she'd left the district.
Gone, but not forgotten. Thank you, Mr. Irwin. No further questions.
Mr. Lotterby?
No questions, Your Honour.
The case, may the witness be released, Your Honour?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Mr. Irwin.
Thank you, Your Honour.
Your Honour, I suggest that now is the proper time to have that letter introduced to the court.
I make no bones about the fact that I would still prefer to keep this letter out of the case if I possibly could. Communications of this kind deserve some privilege. But inasmuch as the only reason for forever withholding the letter was the public interest, that self-same interest now seems to be almost compelling me to bring it in. Mr. Lotterby, I propose reluctantly to accede to Mr. Dealey's repeated demands. Have you the letter available, so that it may now be put in evidence?
Yes, Your Honour, if Your Honour so rules.
I do.
The contents of the confidential letter, allegedly written by Detective Superintendent Brotherton and containing personal information about Helen Lord, will now have to be revealed. The case of the Queen versus Lord continues tomorrow in the Crown Court.